Amy, I don't look to Islamic theocracies for what the U.S. should do in terms of policy, including immigration policy. But it is worth noting. It is just kind of interesting since the left is playing their bigot baiting game with as much energy as they can muster. It is interesting to know, this comes to us from the Daily Wire. Israeli Jews are forbidden from entering 16 Muslim countries. 6 of the 7 states on Trump's temporary ban currently bar Israeli Jews from entering their country at all. Have you heard anything about anti-Semitism that permeates many of these Islamic theocracies? I haven't heard very much. Chuck Schumer, he's the head clown.
Yes.
Senate Minority Leader Pagliacci. After the Paris attacks that resulted in 137 deaths, Schumer thought it was a good idea to tighten visa loopholes. He even suggested a refugee pause may be necessary. Now, Republicans suggesting the same are un-American. This is Chuck Schumer tweeting, "We must tighten loopholes in the visa waiver program, ensure passports can't be faked, and stop terrorists who want to exploit the system." That was Chuck Schumer before he was Minority Leader Pagliacci. That's November 19th of 2015. But per what Chuck Schumer tweeted, boy, I'll tell you what, that sounds awfully similar to what Vice President Pence said on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd this weekend.
The issue is these are countries that do not have the internal systems in place so that we can be confident today that when people present themselves for access to the United States, that they are who they say they are. Now, there's a 30-day review underway.
Now, I mean, it is sort of important to note with respect to 2 administrations that agree on very little, they agree on those 7 countries. I'm talking about the Obama administration and the Trump administration.
Yeah, because originally they came up with that list. The Obama administration did.
And there was a reason behind it, as Mike Pence just referenced. So that seems to be lost in this conversation. For more on where it stands now that federal district court judge has enjoined it, what President and the Trump administration should do about it, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend, Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin. Senator Johnson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Morning, guys. How you doing?
Good. So you're on Homeland Security in the Senate. This is a core part of your work in the Senate. What about what Mike Pence had to say, these 7 countries, this temporary ban, before we get into the legal matters, the substance of it in terms of the rationale for it?
Well, we did strengthen the visa waiver program to not allow individuals from those countries to basically have their interview waived or waive a visa from coming in this country. We tightened that up under the Obama administration because it made sense to do so. There is no right from non-U.S. citizens to get into this country. And from my standpoint, the chief executive, the President of the United States, has got an awful lot of power when it comes to national security, and particularly when it comes to refugees. Nobody challenged President Obama when he increased the number of refugees he was going to let in this country. Now, we made a political point about it, but he basically has the power in consultation with Congress to set how many people come in from whatever country. The president does. And so he increased the number. I think he announced 110,000 for 2017, and President Trump said, now we're going to knock that down to 50. That is the president's power. Basically, all he has to do is consult with Congress, which means he just tells us what he's going to do. So, again, I think, quite honestly, this is not a good injunction. But now it's in front of the Ninth Circuit, probably the most liberal, progressive circuit court that gets overruled by the Supreme Court all the time. So this is going to work its way through the court system. And I think we need to respect that process. But, but bottom line, I think what the American people are looking for, first and foremost, is how do we keep our homeland safe? And I'm on their side when it comes to that viewpoint.
Well, what about expanding the list? I mean, you have the underwear bomber. He came from Nigeria. The shoe bomber came from the UK. Is that a possibility that it'll be accepted and then it'll be expanded?
Well, what I've been saying for a long time is, if I'm concerned about ISIS operatives coming to the United States, I'm more concerned about the ISIS operatives coming in through our incredibly porous southern borders. We tightened up the visa waiver program, the refugee program. I think there's a pretty easy way of handling that is just take absolutely no risk. And I suggested, putting criteria on for example, if you're talking about Syrians, and there's some real humanitarian situations where you may want to let Syrians in. Why not start with the criteria of women and children, relatives of United States citizens that have the financial wherewithal to support the refugees coming to this country? There's a way of doing this without endangering America's homeland security at all. I'm just not sure that we're doing that right now, and I think that's exactly what President Trump is saying, is let's pause the admittance of refugees from these 7 countries so we can review the process and make sure that we're not taking any risks. Now, irrespective of what the courts do, that review will be undertaken by Secretary Kelly and Department of Homeland Security, and my guess is we'll tighten up the vetting process, and I think that's a good thing.
Sticking on the topic, but taking it domestic, Trump was asked in his Super Bowl interview with O'Reilly about sanctuary cities. Of course, there's legislation pending in the House, Congressman Lou Barletta from Pennsylvania, to defund sanctuary cities. Trump suggested that, look, you want to provide the federal resources for states and cities, but if they're going to flout federal immigration law and make it more difficult and refuse to work with ICE agents, then, there may have to be defunding as a part of that. What do you think the likelihood is of really defunding to the tune of, for example, in Chicago, $5 billion, San Francisco, other big cities that are sanctuary cities or sanctuary counties, of moving in the direction to defund them if they dig in?
Well, listen, I'm all for federalism. I'm all for local control, government close to govern. But there's a role for the federal government in securing this nation is our immigration laws, and local jurisdictions have to respect the immigration laws. That they have to respect the detainers issued by ICE, one of the departments in Homeland Security, to make sure that dangerous people get removed from our streets. And if they're not willing to do that, I think they are definitely put at risk their federal government funding to those jurisdictions. So I'm supportive of the sanctuary city bills that would clamp some real controls, some real penalties on any jurisdiction, local, state, or county that refuses to follow the immigration laws of the United States of America.
Now, do you think the judge who blocked Donald Trump's executive order put our national security in peril?
Probably not by a real significant, not any significant way. I really don't believe so. The secretary has already, he's going to follow the law. At the same time, he's going to use his discretion to make sure that we really thoroughly vet anybody that does come in from those countries. So, again, I think there's a common sense way of doing this without an outright ban of setting criteria, not taking any chances, making sure that we absolutely know who's coming in. For example, my daughter sent me an article of this little Iranian little baby girl that had a heart defect. My daughter had a heart defect, so it kind of definitely affected her. So she sent that to me last week when we were in session on Thursday. I made my staff aware of that and worked with the Oregon senators. And bottom line is that little girl is coming in to get her surgery at a Oregon hospital without even a visa at all, because the State Department of Homeland Security waived that because we're a very compassionate country. There's no risk being taken in America by letting in a little baby girl to get surgery for a heart defect. So there's a way of doing this without risking America, without inflaming the politics. But let's face it, the left is not going quietly into the night here, are they? They're going to obstruct. They're going to scream about just about anything this administration does, no matter how reasonable it is.
Speaking of inflaming, one of the favorite targets of the left for fundraising purposes, for headline purposes, seems to be Trump advisor Steve Bannon. Nancy Pelosi called him a white supremacist last week without any evidentiary support. Time magazine has this foreboding cover featuring Bannon and a profile piece on him.
And on Saturday Night Live, he's the Grim Reaper.
Yeah. Are you concerned at all about Bannon's standing on the National Security Council or his influence in the administration?
I want to see this president succeed in making sure our economy reaches full potential and that our homeland stays safe. And I've heard so many senators on a bipartisan basis for so many years say that elections matter, that the presidents are given great latitude and deference in choosing advisors that they have confidence in, that they are comfortable with, that agree with their views. And so I come from that position. Elections matter, and presidents should be able to surround themselves with advisors that they're comfortable with. That, to my standpoint, it's the end of the story.
All right. He is Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin. Senator Johnson, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro internet. But first, we want to thank Barbara Beach for listening to AM 560 The Answer. Barbara Beach, thanks for making Chicago's Morning Answer and AM 560 part of your day.
Yeah, Barbara.